morning. Today is a very special day. Team C at the University of Phoenix, Class Finance 419, will be meeting with CEO Jeff Baugh of Friendly Hills Bank. Friendly Hills Bank was founded in 2006 and is one of, or actually the only, small bank here in Whittier, California.
Let me back up. We have industry associations, a number of them.
Right.
We are involved with two primarily, the California Bankers Association and the American Bankers Association. California Bankers Association is focused on banks within the state, obviously. A lot of what both associations do is in advocacy, and that is working with the legislators and their staff to understand the implications of different rules and regulations that either are being proposed or have actually been enacted, and how that impacts our business, and most importantly, our ability to serve the community. And with community banks, that's particularly sensitive for those people. I have chosen to become very involved in that process, both the CBA and the ABA. In terms of the CBA, I'm the vice chair of their federal legislative committee, and in terms of ABA, I'm the California delegate for them in terms of federal issues. So that does take me back to Washington quite usually 4 or 5 times a year, and also has me in frequent contact with different legislators and their staff. A recent trip back, we did have an opportunity to meet with the acting FDIC chairman, as well as the Federal Reserve chairman and some of his governors. And those meetings were really focused on the issues facing community banks, both in terms of the economic environment, the regulatory environment, ways that we can improve the regulatory environment. What happens is with certain legislation, regulations are imposed with a particular intent in mind. But often people don't look at the side effects. And it's just like with a new drug. You can have a new drug that might lower cholesterol, but it hurts your eyesight.
Right.
Okay. A lot of these rules and regulations have unintended implications. And most of the people who are writing these rules, people who are passing the laws, don't have a lot of banking experience. And they like to hear from those of us in the field directly. They don't always listen to us, or they might listen to us, but they don't always act the way we tell them they need to. But it's important for us as an industry to have that voice, and the legislators rely on it significantly. So I'm very involved in that process and the things that happen. And so these particular meetings were focused on regulation, accounting rules, things that impact how banks are able to serve the community. Because the reality is, as a result of the increased regulation, it's harder for us to lend, which makes it harder for us to really serve the community. So we're trying to find ways that that can be done more effectively, so that we can gain some efficiencies that will enable us to do more for the community. So we have, the bank establishes a strategic plan, and we review that plan at least annually. And in that plan, we set priorities in terms of what the objectives of the bank are. So right now, the primary objective that we have for the bank is profitability. So we're a new company. We just opened about 5 years ago. And so at first, our priority was growth, so that we could build a book of business that would be sustainably profitable. Now that we've achieved that, our focus is on the actual profitability of the bank. So that is what I would classify as the main priority. Obviously, it's essential for our survival, and also as a publicly traded company, it's very important that we're maintaining quality earnings for our shareholders. Actual number is hard to count. There's 1.6 million shares outstanding, and it's hard for me to give you an accurate count in terms of how many shareholders, because of the way that the accounting works. I mean, I knew what it was at the very beginning. We probably had, close to 300-400. Now that there's been trading activity, it's harder for us to follow that. But I'd assume that the number's probably still pretty comparable. say, my management style is one focused very highly on delegation. I believe you have to give people the opportunity to succeed, which means you also give them the opportunity to fail. And so I put a lot of discretion at the officer level to give them a lot of authority in terms of decisions that need to be made and certain angles that they have to look at. So from standpoint of sound management decision in the finance area, it's just like the other areas of the bank. It's held accountable for its area. You know, having said that, I work very closely with my managers, so it's not like it's this remote relationship. And in the case of finance, they're actually here in the same building, so I have a much closer working relationship there. So in terms of decision support, whenever we have real critical matters, it's usually a mutual decision. My CFO and I come together in agreements, and that happens on almost a daily basis. Definitely the accountability. Accountability from the standpoint that they have access to very sensitive information. So just about anything and everything that happens within the bank, they would have access to that information. Accuracy and timeliness are extremely important. We have certain standards that we have to make as a public company in reporting, and also as a bank, we're required to file what's called a call report within 30 days of each quarter end. So, and that's a very detailed financial report. There's a lot of qualification that goes into it, so that's important. Also, accuracy and timeliness of the information that we provide our board, so that they know exactly what the performance of the bank is, can look at some of the key parameters that we examine. So those are the real critical areas that I would look at in terms of our finance team. We do establish limits according to a variety of different activities. So we have certain authority where it comes to loans, certain authority where it comes to overdrawing a checking account, certain authority in terms of GL tickets, and it's really driven more by the function of that individual, the experience of that individual. This is where that discretion that I talked about comes into play, being able to really delegate a lot of responsibility down. And so as you work with people and develop respect and understanding of their capabilities and keep those parameters focused on their work area, then that helps in terms of establishing certain limits. I don't want to be in a position where I have to sign every GL ticket, and that's all I do all day.
Right.
So you have to delegate it down, but someone who's entry level, you might set a limit in terms of what types of transactions they can process, and dollar limits on the amount of the transactions they can process, and over time expand that more. So it's a little bit of a pyramid, with myself and executive officers having the highest limits and broadest authority, down to line specific people who may have more constrained authority with a lower dollar limit. Just continued growth, development of relationships. The asset size of the bank tends to function on two parameters. Number one, introduction of new business that comes in. Number two, kind of the movement of the existing accounts. You know, balances of our customers' accounts go up and down. We have a lot of transactional accounts here as opposed to CDs. So when you have CDs, it's more costly, but it's more stable because the money just stays there. With transaction accounts, you know, with your own accounts, the money goes up and down. And so you get a lot of fluctuations, and realize that September 30 is just a snapshot. And usually the numbers are higher through the quarter because it's towards the end of the quarter that people are trying to get some of those things paid off, especially end of the year, where we see a lot of that. But even at the quarter ends, you'll see the last few days of the quarter, it'll kind of drop a little bit. But in terms of the third quarter, it was really growth in relationships. We had a lot of new relationships come into the bank.
Makes sense.
don't, in terms of the movement of their stock price, it really doesn't have an impact on us. And our stock seems to be, because of the fact of the nature of the institution, a lot of closely held shares, we don't tend to really move with the market. Our stock tends to differentiate from the market. So I don't see any correlation between what's happening with the B of A stock in terms of with us. The other that you mentioned was IndyMac. And obviously with all the process that happened with that failure and the issues of the subsequent collapse, that did impact us from a variety of perspectives. Most direct perspective is that there were people looking for a new home in terms of banking that had been very caught up in a lot of the high rates that were being paid at some of those institutions, and we're now looking for a more stable alternative that they could have comfort in. So we find whenever there's a lot of this uncertainty in the big bank market, it tends to favor the little banks because people are looking for that confidence.
That's right.
And they see us as having a very consistent model, which is true. Our business model is the same as the day we opened, and we provide the same level of service that we did before. So while they go up and down and show a lot of volatility either in their public relations issues or their stock price, we're seen as a very consistent platform that people can fall to. The other aspect, though, that happened from that is that we ended up with a lot more regulation. So our regulatory impact is significantly higher now as a result of reform that was carried out in response to a lot of the things that happened with institutions like IndyMac. The sad thing is a lot of that was tied to subprime. We don't do anything that's subprime. These are all factors that are outside. We don't have any exposure to that type of issue that created the problem, but as a result of that, we're now burdened with additional regulation that it's just, we have to factor. It's a new cost of business.
Educated.
I know.
Very impressive, very impressive. Well, this concludes our interview of Jeffrey Ball, President CEO of Friendly Hills Bank. Any other questions from the team?
No, I think I'm good.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Okay.
Thank you
very much,
so
Jeff.
much.
Good luck
Really
with
appreciate
your
it.
project.
Thank you.
All right.
Sure. Where did you get that? Where'd that come from?
Where'd that come from? Jessica, okay.
Okay.
Very